Never in the history of the United States has a president been threatened so many times and by so many people. And Donald Trump is aware of this, which is why he wants to take multiple actions in a hurry, sometimes in a rushed manner, living on the edge until he can't go any further.
What's going on? Every Venezuelan opposition party belongs to the Socialist International, all of them.
But how is it possible that the Venezuelan opposition in Spain is closer to the PSOE than to the truth, and they attack you, who are their compatriot? I don't understand. For money.
And as for FIFA, for example, it's a monopoly. It's a global monopoly without competition. It's a cartel of 211 state monopolies granted by law. Therefore, it's the states that corrupt everything else. For example, Spanish law prohibits the existence of a second football federation. So there's no competition, but it's the state that prohibits it. Because without this state foundation, any organizer could set up, well, I don't know, alternative federations. But the law, the state doesn't allow them.
Anchon Bastos said that the state is a group of criminals. He uses the word bandits, organized to steal our money through taxes. At their origin, that's what all states are. Later on, they gain legitimacy, but people shouldn't forget that at the beginning of history, it was a group of bandits who arrived in a territory and imposed their rules and imposed their own laws. Later, they acquire another kind of legitimacy. That's what I was telling Albert the other day. I say, who is the state? I don't know them. I don't know where they are. I don't know who they are. Castillon Confidencial
by Albert Castillon. A huge hug to the Legion of Friends, to the soldiers who are in this trench defending freedom of the press and individual freedom. We are here to open your eyes, to expose, to wake you up so that you are not lulled to sleep. That is the goal of this daily news space. Look, they have tried to take his life, Donald Trump's. And you won't see it as a big headline in the news because this time he wasn't shot in the ear or nearly gunned down by a lone wolf like what happened recently in Washington. The truth is that Donald Trump has suffered not 3 attacks, as the official sources say, but a dozen assassination attempts since he became president in his first and second terms. Enemy countries, drug clans, cartels, they all want to see him dead, and he keeps his tough agenda against everyone who goes after him. The new assassination attempt happened upon his return from the trip to Turkey after the NATO summit. He arrived in Turkey with the new Air Force One, the one gifted to him by the Emir of Qatar, more than 1,000 soldiers, millions of dollars as a gift. He was planning to return to Washington with that plane via England, making a stop at a U.S. base in England. But he couldn't do it because the Secret Service recommended he forget about the new Air Force One and leave quickly with the old one. You're seeing it. It was in a hangar waiting in case something happened. This old Air Force One plane is almost 37 years old, and yet its anti-missile system is much safer than the one Qatar gave him. That's why the Secret Service made the recommendation. He left the NATO summit in such a hurry that no journalist was able to capture that usual image of Donald Trump saying goodbye when he leaves a venue. The Secret Service told him there was no time for photographs. They ran with him to the old Air Force One, got him on board, and made all the passengers pull down the plane's window shades. The old Air Force One landed without further complications at the U.S. base in England, where he took a jet to Washington. But what was the threat? Who warned of this new attempt on President Trump's life? Well, here we have the information. Because it was Israel's Mossad that warned the United States Secret Service about the plan that Iran had devised, with Iran as the mastermind behind this attack. In recent weeks, protests against Donald Trump have multiplied in Iran, especially after the funerals and the assassination of Ali Khamenei. That animosity toward Trump only comes from part of the population. Most people are actually delighted with him and consider him the only option to free the country. But it's true that the government still has many loyal, well-armed supporters who continue to attack Trump whenever they can. The goal is to end his life just like he ended the life of the Iranian leader. It also happened that during those days, the truce between the United States and Iran ended, and during the NATO summit, strategic locations in Iran were attacked by United States troops. Donald Trump has given very clear instructions to his team. What happens if he is killed, if Iran assassinates him? And the plan is to intensify the attacks. There is a dossier Donald Trump has signed stating that if he is assassinated by an attack from Iran, they should devastate a large part of the country in strategic locations where US bombs have not yet fallen. That plan exists because he knows that possibility is real. Iran is not just any country. Iran is armed to the teeth and with the latest military technology. But how did Iran want to end Donald Trump's life? According to our information, the Israeli Mossad was the one who warned the United States Secret Service about the plan. And the plan was to attack Air Force One, the one from Qatar, the new one, the one he had just started using once it was in the air. For that, Iran has two types of unmanned drones. One of them is the Shahed, which you are seeing. It flies very close to the ground. They go in groups, they attack in groups of 5. By flying so close to the ground, the noise blends in with ground noise and it is not easily detected by radars. They are very small engines that also emit very little, not much heat either, so infrared sensors don't detect them either. According to our information, waves of this drone were prepared to attack the presidential plane. Some say that the Syrian border is only 500 kilometers from Ankara airport. It could be a possibility, although there are also numerous cells of the Revolutionary Guard. Iranian cells remain on Turkish soil, and Turkey knows it. They arrest some when they find them, but others have never been detained. There is a second Iranian drone that, according to Mossad, could have attacked Qatar's Air Force One when it left Ankara. Now, this one is even more lethal. The Hadid 110, known as the Laju, it's the fastest drone in the world. It flies at a speed of 510 kilometers per hour and evades radar. It's cutting-edge technology. Iran is up to date. Either of those drones could have attacked Air Force One. Why did they try it this time? It's very simple because they know that the new Air Force One gifted by Qatar has a flaw in its anti-missile system. Gentlemen, the United States detected it. The anti-missile defense system of the new plane is not effective, or at least not as effective as the old Air Force One. In fact, the Secret Service informed the Pentagon about it. The Pentagon is aware of this issue, but it was Donald Trump's stubbornness to use his plane for the first time, the one gifted to him by the Emir of Qatar, that put his life at risk. Boeing's new Air Force One, made in the US, won't be ready until late 2027 with all the latest anti-missile systems. Therefore, the almost secret information that the anti-missile systems on the new Air Force One from Qatar are not as effective as the old one reached Iran. They were aware of that breach in the secret security information and wanted to take advantage of it with a drone attack. Luckily, Israeli intelligence detected what was going to happen and they were able to prevent it. How many more times will they try to end Donald Trump's life? Who will finally succeed? If they do succeed, let's hope they don't. Never in the history of the United States has a president been threatened so many times and by so many people. And Donald Trump is aware of this, which is why he wants to take multiple actions in a hurry, sometimes in a rushed way, living on the edge until he can't go any further. This has been the latest attack against the President of the United States. We'll see when the next one happens. Welcome, we're investigating. Las Seguros Download Seguros, the easy insurance at download more. Ladies and gentlemen, after the double earthquake, Venezuela is still suffering the consequences and having to endure the fact that the useless Chavistas who govern the country with the permission of the United States are now also responsible for thousands of deaths due to negligence. There are people who are in exile, fighting hard for things to change now, for something to finally happen in Venezuela, for everything to go back to how it was before Hugo Chavez, like it was before 28 years of dictatorship. The president of the Supreme Court of Venezuela is living in exile in Washington, because when they were appointed, Maduro started imprisoning the judges one after another, and he was able to escape. He has Spanish relatives of Spanish origin from Huelva, from Ayamonte. He is in exile. He has a lot to tell. And by the way, he knows perfectly well about the activities of Podemos and Rodriguez Zapatero in that part of the world because he was there. Today we are talking with Judge Miguel Angel Martin. How are you?
How are you, Albert? Thank you for inviting me, and greetings to your whole audience. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. When are you coming back to Venezuela? When will Delcy Rodriguez finally be gone? Will you go away and leave us in peace? Thank you.
Well, nowadays we are living under a form of tutelage, which is a very unusual process. The transition in Venezuela hasn't started yet, because according to political science, every transition begins when a regime leaves. And a new government comes in, one that we are sure will be strictly democratic. I hope to return to Venezuela to work and to help Venezuela move forward and work on that transition to build a new country. Obviously, I still can't go there because I don't have security guarantees, neither for myself nor for my family, to be able to return. So we are still waiting for the right moment. Yes, we are waiting for the right moment. And I'll finish by saying that this is happening because of a very sad circumstance. And it's because the Venezuelan opposition doesn't have the capacity to manage the country at this stage. They will have it when the transition arrives, but they don't have the capacity for this stage. And that's why we're experiencing these circumstances.
You are of Spanish origin and have dual nationality. As a Spaniard, I am ashamed that my country let itself be financed by stealing Venezuela's wealth. For example, so that the Podemos party could grow with Pablo Iglesias and Irene Montero. It seems proven that later Zapatero went to take all the commissions, bribes, gold mines, and whatever he could from the regime in exchange for doing favors for Maduro as a lackey of the regime. And now they're telling me that Sanchez is still being financed by Venezuela because he's under investigation, and there is more than enough proof and evidence that will possibly determine that. If I feel outraged and dirty, how must you feel, right?
Look, for us, what's happening with Mr. Zapatero is no surprise to Venezuelans. It's not a surprise at all. We knew from the very moment Mr. Zapatero started getting involved in Venezuelan politics that he was not a mediator. He has always tried to present himself as a mediator, like a sort of European Carter Center, and that's false. He is a representative. He has always been someone close to Maduro's regime, to Chavez, to Delcy, and to all these leftist groups. Because ideologically, I imagine he feels comfortable there and operates under that umbrella, but he has never been a mediator. He has been a representative of that wing. Logically, the fact that he was Prime Minister of Spain gives him a very interesting field of action from an international point of view. But he is not the only one. We also include Lula da Silva, who is currently president, or Correa from Ecuador, or Nestor Kirchner, who has passed away, and now Cristina Kirchner, and so on. That is to say, this is a group that has taken advantage of the fact that Venezuela has invaluable resources, and it has had invaluable resources. Because if there's one thing we Venezuelans have no doubt about, it's that oil, Venezuelan oil, that wealth which is fabulous, unfortunately has not reached to improve people's lives, especially Venezuelans' lives. Mr. Chavez used it, Mr. Maduro used it, and Ms. Delcy is using it. Now, of course, with all the limitations it has and the bans it faces in the United States, the Venezuelan regime has used it with a group of pawns that have been working. And among those pawns in Spain, at first, it was the Podemos group Monedero and Iglesias. It bothers them nowadays because they don't like people saying this. But the truth is that the Podemos party started its activities with money that came from the Venezuelan regime. They had no significant political activity in Spain before, and in a short time, they have achieved. They even managed, from the creation of Podemos, to come to power in the Madrid City Hall, in the Madrid Council, and in the Barcelona Council. You might remember that. And so, well, how does that phenomenon happen? Well, because of money. And that's how it happened. And Zapatero has also been part of this group. That is, I'm going to put it this way, Albert, with this context, so that maybe in a blunt way we can understand it, explain it better. Thank you. This is like working for Pablo Escobar Gaviria, the drug trafficker. If someone worked for Pablo Escobar Gaviria, were they or were they not an accomplice to drug trafficking? Without a doubt, of course. Well, then the same thing happens here. If we are talking about a regime like Chavez's and Maduro's, which today has been proven to be a regime that, I repeat, systematically violated human rights, systematically, the crimes against humanity continued, plus transnational corruption. Anyone who has worked with them or has been part of that leadership must necessarily be subject to an investigation. What happens is that since in Venezuela we don't have justice in the hands of the right people, of honorable people, that hasn't been able to develop. We have had to rely on Spanish justice, which hasn't been the fastest, or on American justice, which hasn't been either. I can't cover everything. But the reality is that the day we are able to open this Pandora's box, major investigations will be carried out into all those people. And it won't be Spanish or American justice anymore. It will have to be Venezuelan justice, God willing.
Hopefully. But until Venezuelan justice arrives and you are once again in the position you should be as president of the Supreme Court in your country, we trust, for example, in the testimony of Alex Saab, Polo Carvajal's snitch. Because what you're telling me, and it's what we believe in Spain, is that if PDVSA's oil through people like Zapatero is so heavily financed or has financed the Sanchez government, it's like saying that narco-terrorism has financed the Sanchez government. And that relationship, which nobody talks about in Spain except for a few journalists, is talked about in the United States. The person being investigated by the DEA is Zapatero, and the one they want to confess what he knows about Zapatero, although it's not the American priority, I know, but also about Zapatero, is Alex Saab. It's precisely the DEA that's interested in Polo Carvajal. The relationship between the narco state, the cartel of the Suns, drug money, and the financing of Spain and its government through Zapatero. Will we reach that point soon or not?
I'm not sure when, but we'll get there eventually. Why? The United States has a justice system that is different. It's the Anglo-Saxon system, which is different from the Hispanic American justice system. Here they open investigations, and then once they have decisive facts, that remains closed until the prosecution makes it public. As long as they don't make it public, those cases remain closed. They can't be publicized. And it is known, for example, that Delcy Rodriguez had 3 cases or has 3 cases, and they are closed, they are not made public, and they are cases of transnational corruption. Investigations have also been carried out where personalities from other countries are involved. That's why American justice may take time, but it's there, right? That's it. In the case of Spanish justice and everything that's happening with Plus Ultra, little by little, that criminal network is being dismantled, right? Evidence is being presented. The evidence from the point of view of criminal law warrants conducting investigations to reach conclusive facts. In the case of Mr. Zapatero, he has lost all moral judgment. Why? Because he is involved in events and there are indications. There are statements that are important. Senator Piedra Córdoba made a statement that Mr. Zapatero had informed her that he had been given a mine. Logically, the mine won't be in his name, but under a frontman's name. But why does Senator Piedra Córdoba make that statement when she is part of that group? Number 1, number 2. Hugo Carvajal, who has been the Director of Intelligence and Security in Venezuela, he was the one in charge of having all the information, not only on Venezuelans, but also on those involved with them. He has clearly stated the same thing that Mrs. Córdoba has said. If we link that to what's happening with Plus Ultra, which is an airline, but it's not a flag carrier, it's a new airline, it's a capital, it's suspicious because when you look at the economic group that owns Plus Ultra, they weren't people who were in the industry, nor were they people who came from it. I mean, they're rich, they're new money, right? Yes, they're new money. So where did that money come from? All of that has to be justified logically. But what's incredible is that during the pandemic, Sanchez's government granted it money, approved funds for it in the Council of Ministers. And what a coincidence, in that Council of Ministers was Mr. Iglesias. So when you check all this, you say, wait a minute, something is happening here. And then when you check the economic standard of living these people have, you say, no, these people, what happened with Zapatero's jewelry is obvious. And we all know, those of us who deal with criminal law, that these criminals usually either buy gold or buy works of art or buy jewelry. Because that way they can keep it stored somewhere. And it's the best way to keep the money, they have it in the banks. Or the use of a front man involving the family. I mean, Mr. Zapatero lost any moral authority. He lost that. Now, the other one is missing, the one who's working, who's already...
But you're pointing out a possibility to me that isn't talked about here in Spain. It is considered that the Council of Ministers collectively approved 53 million for Plus Ultra because Sanchez said so and his government backed it. And the rest were simply there to keep getting paid. But Irene Montero, wife of Pablo Iglesias, was there, and there were other members of the party. Are you suggesting that maybe Pablo Iglesias, Irene Montero, and Podemos did consciously approve that bailout in exchange for favors? And that this could have led them to justify, for example, buying a house like the one they have in Galapagar, which is worth several million, although they say they bought it at a lower price. You have more than just indications to support what you're saying, don't you, Judge?
Yes, of course. Besides the indications, there are relevant facts that, when you put them together, logically lead you to certain conclusions. For example, what we're talking about, the approval of the aid to Plus Ultra during the pandemic that was signed. That was a session of the Council of Ministers. They participated there. There has to be some responsibility because that money belongs to the Spanish people.
No doubt.
That money belongs to the Spanish people. At a crucial moment for Spain, it was a time when humanity was suffering a lot. So here there is administrative responsibility. Here there is individual responsibility. There is also official responsibility. I mean, all of that has to be analyzed. If the Spanish justice system doesn't do it, at some point the Venezuelan justice system will. That's what I can assure you.
And tell me something else. You came to Spain, you went to the Senate to talk about this, about the financing of Podemos by the Venezuelan Bolivarian regime. And since you did that, you came under a brutal, savage attack. You noticed that attack here in Spain, didn't you?
No, not only in Spain, but also groups of Venezuelan politicians who started portraying me as a Spanish magistrate. Because my parents were born in Spain and my family is Spanish. In order to become a magistrate, I had to give up my Spanish nationality to be able to serve as a magistrate. And that's what I did at that time. And what the Venezuelan opposition did, because that was the Venezuelan opposition, along with the relationships they had. And with socialism, because that's the truth. I mean, there's a big, serious problem here, Albert, so the audience can understand. The Venezuelan opposition, I don't know, I've never belonged to a political party. All my life, I've worked for the Venezuelan justice system since I was 18 years old. I've never worked for any political party, and I'm against judges submitting themselves to political organizations. Why? Because unfortunately our countries collapsed due to the loss of institutional cooptation. So what has happened? That politicians always want to keep judges under their thumb. And that can't be, because judges are the only ones who can keep the branches of government in check. That's why they have to be autonomous and independent. So, from the very moment I presented evidence of key facts and of the money they had received, people from the group Podemos, through a cultural center, by contracts signed with Mr. Monero and Mr. Iglesias, with various Venezuelan institutions, among which are the Supreme Tribunal of Justice. The Venezuelan Institute of Social Security was one of them, along with a few other ministries, because they even created an academic chair called Miranda, and they started receiving significant amounts of money. And from there, Podemos was born, from there. What a coincidence, right? Now, what happens? The Venezuelan opposition, all the political parties are members of the Socialist International, absolutely all of them.
But how can it be that the Venezuelan opposition in Spain is closer to the PSOE than to the truth? And they attack you, who are their fellow countrymen. I don't understand. I really don't.
For money, Alberto. Because in the end, most of the Venezuelan opposition has been involved in a financial operation. And the proof is what's happening. They caught Mr. Maduro and Delcy, and they're not in power. I'm not talking about Corina Machado, since she should be kept completely out of that, because she doesn't belong to these opposition groups. He will interact out of political utilitarianism. That's already a political strategy. I don't get involved in that. But unfortunately, all the political parties in Venezuela are part of the Socialist International. And that's been the case even before Chavez, Alberto.
Yeah. Therefore, when you come to Spain from time to time, and you were recently in Madrid, you're not visiting any opposition members who are here either, right? Because there are more enemies than friends, right?
Yes, no, but there are also friends. There are also friends, because there are also friends, and there are great allies, because, and I want to say this very clearly, Albert, Mr. Zapatero, Mr. Iglesias, Mr. Monedero do not represent the Spanish people.
Thank you for that.
We decent Venezuelans know that Spain, which is the mother country, right, is the best ally for Venezuela and will be the best ally for Venezuela in many ways. In fact, it has been an ally of freedom. I was in the Spanish Senate and they opened their doors to me. Of course, the ones who open their doors to me are the political organizations that want justice for Venezuela and know the harm that has been caused. Spain as well, because in the end, all of this, look, a gold scheme, an oil scheme, they have benefited. And that's the truth, Albert. They have benefited.
No doubt, no doubt. How much money do you think Zapatero has stolen from the Venezuelans? Have you calculated it? No.
No, because first, an investigation into that matter hasn't been conducted. It has to be done from Venezuela because that's where the real evidence is about who the front men are. Of all the people who may have had access to power in Venezuela and to business in Venezuela.
It's a pleasure to talk with you. We could talk for hours, Miguel Angel Martin, and I invite you to future programs. As events in Venezuela continue to unfold, we need to know that the independent judiciary, which you represent, is overseeing everything that is being done. It has been a pleasure, President. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Albert. A big hug and greetings to your whole audience.
593, 9,159,304.91 completely trustworthy.
Look, we are still shocked by the deaths in the district of Almeria. And there is a fact that keeps running through my head. To fight the fires, there are 6 planes, 6. There should be 14, but there are only 6 because the rest are either broken down or have some mechanical problem. And they've been withdrawn for inspection. So if something happens, there are 6. And in all of Spain, there are only 10 helicopters to put out fires or to transport firefighters, only 10. But to go to the graduation of Sanchez's daughter, 3 planes, including an Airbus with capacity for 80 people, in which only Sanchez traveled on the way there because he was going to Turkey, and from Turkey to London. Not on the way back. On the way back on that plane were Sanchez's father and Sanchez's mother, who went to the graduation. Begoña Gomez, who went on a commercial flight, apparently with her in-laws, to see the girl. Well, look, okay, Diario got the most sought-after image, which was this one. This is the place, University of Bristol, which, by the way, Begoña, I don't know, they're telling Judge Peinado lies that you told him you were going to London and you went to Bristol, which is not the same. But anyway, she didn't say she was going to Bristol. She didn't say it was on the 9th either. She told him it was the 10th, and on the 10th, they were already back. Small lies, nothing too serious. The biggest secret is who pays for this. Notice that during the ceremony, Sanchez was holding his father's arm the whole time, as if he had feelings, as if he was getting emotional, at least to me. It's hard for me to believe, but maybe he has a bit of empathy, even if it's just for his daughter Inoa, right? Begoña Gomez and the mother-in-law across the way. This university costs $40,000 a year. She graduated in psychology. But then the other girl goes to another private one, which costs almost $8,000 with Sanchez and Begoña's salary. That's not enough. There are several journalists, including myself, who are trying to find out who is paying for it. Who is paying for it? Someone must have an account number from the University of Bristol that shows who is paying, because Sanchez isn't paying for this. Or maybe we're all paying for it. You know, there's a part of the budget that's classified funds, and you can do a lot of things with that. We need to find that out soon. Pilar Almagro from Bogota. Welcome. How are you?
Hello, Albert. Hello, Confidenciales. Well, I ask myself the same question.
Who pays for this? Who's footing the bill? Yes.
Because, yes, let's see. Sanchez earns 110,000 gross per year. And the two girls cost about 70,000 a year. An elite private education that I think is fantastic because I defend the right of any family, including the president's, to decide on their children's education and not the state. Okay, but the numbers don't add up. So we're always dealing with an elite that legislates for others, but never applies it to themselves. And in the end, as you said, Albert, we all pay for it. We taxpayers pay for it. And the Falcon isn't just a side issue, it's the system.
Yes, yes, yes. It's very possible that just like they should have paid for the trip themselves and we all ended up paying for it, maybe the same thing happened with the university. I hope someone can shed some light for us. We have a lot of sources in Great Britain. I don't know if there are any in Bristol. If there is anyone, give me a hand, look into it. Let's see. I'm sure they don't care there because they probably don't even know who Sanchez is. So they can tell us which account number or from where or from which organization, foundation, institution is paying for the party. My dear Jose Luis Rancaño, this is enough for another documentary, isn't it?
Yes, but that one, they won't even let me publish it on YouTube, Albert.
Man, they'll take your Goya away. Be careful.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Albert, and with you too, Pilar. Let me clarify for you. The amounts, Pilar, are 70,000 euros, not including extraordinary expenses with additional costs for the stay in London. Anyone who has visited England knows it's a very expensive country. We're possibly talking about nearly 100,000 euros a year in school expenses. It's good to put a number on it, right? This business of the 100,000 euros a year for these champions of public education, I share Pilar's opinion. I believe in freedom. I firmly believe in freedom. And I think everyone can take their children to study wherever they want with two conditions. That they pay for it with their own money, money that must be obtained legally, and that is consistent with what they preach or promote for others. These champions of public education who go on about it all day at rallies and on television, giving us moral lessons, talking about the virtues of public education, about how good these public schools are, but none of them send their children to public school. I find it truly disgusting.
But they all do it.
Yes, they all do it.
Jordi Pujol, you know that Jordi Pujol or Artur Mas, they did the same thing. They sent them to the French school in Barcelona. They wouldn't set foot in a public one, not even as a joke. It doesn't matter which party. I think they all do the same.
Ranchan, these guys have even more nerve. These people, I mean, these ones do it, but they also give speeches saying that those who do it, the rest who do it, are evil. I mean, if Pilar and I do it, we're evil for taking them there, but they're not.
We've put Pona Sanchez many times, but 100,000 euros a year is worth it for them to come back. But
look, I'm going to give you a piece of information I heard today.
Wait, hold on. The Chiringuito says that if you take your child to a private university, you're taking them to a diploma mill, and he says it with those words.
We support public universities with the same conviction with which we want to fight the rise of private institutions that, without rigor and without scruples, prioritize business over quality. Those diploma mills that do not meet the standards we should demand from our higher education, damaging the entire system.
Yeah. Spain, the country with the most universities in Europe and the worst ranked. Pilar, there must be a reason for this, right?
Yes.
Well, it's because they're indoctrinating us. I mean, if you go to a public university, to the Autonomous University of Barcelona, which we know, right? 3 years ago, I earned a master's degree in philosophy there. And the professors called me out in front of my classmates. They called me immoral just because I was a businesswoman. And it happened several times. I mean, that's how things are.
Please, really, just for being a businesswoman.
Pilar, Alvaro, they should rename all Spanish universities. Many of them should be called Marxist Complutense University, you know? I mean, they have a title. No, but do you know what they're starting to say now? Do you know what they say about why she takes her girls to London? Why? So that they won't be harassed in Spain by far-right journalists. But honestly, they've got some nerve. Their talking points are unbelievable. Of course. Did she want to take them?
100,000 euros out of obligation. Tell me, Pilar.
No, she could also take her. You can
to London to a
public place, but no. Sure.
They're socialists. They're here to give a lot and receive little. You know how they are. Well, it's amazing. By the way, congratulations, Rancanyo, on your documentary about David Lafoz. I have listeners who cried watching it. It's already reaching 20,000 views and it hasn't even been 4 days. Listen to what the insiders who wanted to leave a message say about him. Dominguez, Francisco, Isabel, Maria Jose, and Gabi.
I don't understand how Rancaño isn't given a forest. A marvel, as always with him, he's completely sincere. He remembers, look.
I've been watching the documentary by David Lafoz. It's amazing and everything shown is completely true.
The documentary about David Lafoz is impressive. Thank you, Jose Luis Rancaño. I was really moved. Of course, Spain and Spaniards don't deserve everything that's happening to us.
A friend who hadn't listened to you before but will from now on just sent me Jose Luis Rancaño's documentary.
And that's it.
Many thanks to Jose Luis.
I don't have any of the platforms. Well, I don't even have Wi-Fi at home in a village in Asturias as I'm speaking to you. But I would like to pay you, Rancaño, for the documentaries you have, all of them. We'll get in touch. I'll pay you and you can send me the link or email it to me.
What is Gabby, who is a trusted friend who worked in the media, now he's retired. Well, and we could go on like this all morning, Jose Luis. People really liked it. Congratulations.
Our trusted friends are such good people. There are really good people among our fellow Spaniards. We really have good people. Of course, as my grandfather used to say, this is a great country. If not for a few people, it would be extraordinary. But look, I just want to remind you of something I said the other day in an interview I gave. When part of the documentary, the most important part, was filmed in Chinchon at a demonstration that was held last year in honor of David Lafoz and organized by independent farmers associations. Independent associations exist because the major ones don't organize anything. They're just like the UGT and workers' commissions in other sectors, right? I was filming that day with my son, and my son is the same age as David Lafoz, and his name is also David, like David. And we got emotional and we had, do you know what feeling we had when we saw our fellow countrymen, farmers, ranchers, people who make their living from the sea? The feeling of abandonment on their faces, a sense of abandonment. And you know, that feeling of abandonment is starting to become common among our fellow countrymen because I had already experienced it during the flood. And we have experienced it on the trains in Aramus. It's a sequence that repeats itself. It's like a kind of loop, seeing the abandonment of our Spanish compatriots. Those who need our help the most, who are in difficulties, in emergency situations. At that demonstration, there was no political representation, none of significance. There was no institutional presence. No media outlet with a national presence was there. No one. And I got emotional when the tractor demonstration passed through the towns before reaching Chinchon. And it was the people who came out onto their balconies and out of their homes, brought out Spanish flags, and applauded the tractors that passed through the street. That's the Spanish people. And that's who deserves to be honored. And that's who my documentary honors.
That's exactly how the documentary begins. The caravan of tractors on a road, and then the explanations and the 1,000 emotions that surrounded David Lafoz. Listen.
All I have left is the pain of losing him. Having to sign a son's inheritance papers, that's very sad. He saw that there was no future in farming anymore, and he came under pressure that led him to do what he did.
Farmers and ranchers are going to disappear. We will all regret it, and well, then there will be no turning back. There will be no turning back.
There is a confidant named Chema Perer who has made a song for David Lafoz Porilla. Listen to a bit of that song. Let's start since he wants to send it to you.
They say that the earth keeps the names of those who know how to love, and yours blooms in silence. Every time dawn breaks over the wheat field, you were a son of the horizon, with hands full of truth, learning that the world's bread begins with sowing. You weren't looking for monuments nor a medal to hang. It was enough for you to look at the sky and let the earth breathe again. Because there are men who don't leave even when time says goodbye.
Thank you very much, Chema, for your sensitivity. I'm sending you the song. Let's get started because it's really moving. You watched the documentary too, you were telling me, Pilar.
Yes, yes, and it really gives you goosebumps. I truly thank you, Jose Luis, for having done this. I mean, it's a thank you from all Spaniards for your work and that of your team.
Thank you very much.
It's just, I mean, thank you, really. We are under the boot of a predatory state, a controlling state, and a vengeful state. Yes. And every producer is treated as a permanent suspect, burdened with unbearable demands. And every notification, like you said, my friend Albert, puts them in a state of terror. And they take away the fruit of our labor 2 out of every 3 days. From our work, from the fruit of our labor, they take it in taxes. And then there's the neglect you mentioned. I mean, they take 2 out of every 3, and then when we really need it, which is truly an obligation of the state, they just leave us stranded.
They are enslaved by a European regulation that is, I'm going to say it's stupid, but it's not stupid, it's criminal. Because it has a purpose, it has a goal, and the goal is to wipe out European agriculture. Not just Spanish agriculture, they want to wipe out European agriculture. They want to get rid of farmers and ranchers in France, in Italy, all over Europe. And sometimes we forget that these people fill our refrigerators. They are the ones who feed us. They are the ones who allow us to feed our children and our grandchildren. And I think it's because they have a special grudge against these farmers because they are free. They are far from the cities. They keep traditions alive, the ways of living they have inherited from their parents, grandparents, and ancestors. They are not so susceptible to modern influences. They are eager to get rid of them. The regulations, really, one day we should do a program about it. The regulations are criminal. The regulations that apply to our farmers and ranchers. And don't even get me started on the fishing community. There simply won't be anyone left to get on a boat and go fishing. No one.
There will still be a hand, and we'll keep doing it well, but with control. That regulation is at the European level. You're in Bogota, in Colombia. That madness hasn't reached there yet. For example, chat control. Gentlemen, it hasn't been approved yet. Let's not get confused. But it's going to happen between now and the end of the year. What was approved last week is to extend a temporary regulation that allows the platforms. It doesn't force them to remove content that could be harmful to minors, that could also slip through. But chat control is about to be approved, but it hasn't been approved yet. And that's why we're fighting to stop them from doing it. Remember that this means the end of end-to-end privacy in a conversation, for example, on WhatsApp. For example, on Telegram, on Signal. If I send something to Pilar and someone thinks it's not appropriate, they can block it. Or they even report it and remove it without a judge acting on their own initiative, which is what's serious. Alejandra, Miguel, Karin from London, and Maribel, listen.
It should be the other way around. Chat control should monitor all the social networks of the members of the European Parliament to see if the work they do is in favor of European citizens or their own personal interests.
This chat control reminds me of the Corcuera law, now updated for the 21st century and modern technology. I suppose they'll give a list to the digital platforms with the words they consider shouldn't be allowed. To say,
all right.
So we'll meet up with our friends and try to agree and conspire to speak in code?
We are already living in a global dictatorship. We should get ready. Also, I wanted to tell you that I have the CyberCost VPN. And I hope I can keep calling out governments, whether they're left-wing, right-wing, centrist, or whatever, when they deserve it.
Now, what we were missing is for them to also control what we say, what I send you, or what any confidential source sends you. What they're doing with this is creating panic and making it so we can't have freedom of expression anymore.
This is very serious, Pilar. Has it reached Colombia where you are now?
Here we have other problems, but there are things that are not allowed here. Family is off limits. Your home is off limits. I mean, private property is not so. Private property and self-ownership.
That's not the case here. Squatters living for 2 years while you pay for electricity and gas doesn't happen here.
If you tell that story here, no one believes you. If someone squats in your house, the neighbor kicks them out before you even arrive. I mean, it's unthinkable, just like it used to be in Spain.
Yeah. They haven't even heard of chat control.
No, the thing about chat control is that it was actually reintroduced by the European People's Party. I mean, this was already there. I mean, this was already out. Already on March 26th, that regulation was rejected with 311 votes, I think, against 228 and so on. They snuck it in through the back door, taking advantage of people being on vacation with just 1 day left before the holidays. There were only a few parliamentarians there, and they pushed it through in the second round, just like that, through the back door. I'm telling you, the Partido Popular, which claims to be liberal, well, we can see what they're really like. And listen, it was voted on and we're going on until 2028, the year 2028, the chat control, the version 0.01. I mean, version 0.02 is much more serious and we're not there yet, I mean, to be precise. But they've snuck it in through the back door. I mean, a vote in the European Parliament, if they want to push it through, they use other legal tricks and sneak it in through the back door. That's the problem. Rancaño. No.
Rancaño, is that right? Yes.
It's the trend of the times. What people haven't quite understood is that the bigger the organizations, supranational, that is, the bigger they are, the larger their scale, the less control there is over them. That's why I'm such a defender of nation states, because nation states were controlled by their own citizens. They had their own institutions and their own methods of control. These large institutions like the European Economic Community, these big supranational institutions are very difficult to control, Albert. They act with virtually total discretion. And also it has happened that in pure capitalist systems, in those that were fervent defenders of freedom, like the American model, controls over trusts and monopolies have been relaxed. That is to say, the United States was a pioneer in putting controls on monopolistic practices. Any company, and Pilar knows this perfectly well, has monopolistic tendencies because those tendencies are driven by the company's own bottom line. But that's what antitrust policies are for. Well, we're seeing this merger of large supranational organizations and a lack of control over monopolistic private activities. And add to that the fact that Gramsci's theory has triumphed in recent years. Totally. That is to say, the communists have understood that the ones they need to convince to turn them to socialism are the billionaires and the most powerful and wealthy. And this situation makes it very difficult for us to defend ourselves. Professor Anchon Bastos says, and he is absolutely right, that we need to look for organizations of very small, tiny states because that's where people live with the most freedom. For example, Luxembourg, for example, Switzerland. If one day we ask the Swiss what their politicians are like, we're going to cry, but we'll cry out of envy and sadness. That is, the control that citizens have over their own political situation compared to these large organizations, the European Economic Community, the big states. That's a shame, but we have to start returning to earlier principles.
Of course, in Switzerland, for example, if you are a counselor, you don't get paid. And you serve as a counselor a little bit each day after you finish your regular work. You are doing a service to society and you stay for a while and then you leave. Here, that's unthinkable. Here, come on, try telling someone, do society a service and become a counselor. Can you imagine that, Rancaño? It's impossible.
It's impossible, among other things, because here politics is a career. In Switzerland, politics is a public service in the strictest, purest sense, Albert. What do I mean by this? Well, it is managed in an altruistic way, that which brings interests together. But of course, Swiss politicians have no intention of managing the personal, family, and professional lives of their citizens. Spanish politicians do.
Yes, without a doubt. There's a movie that might be prophetic. Imagine civil society fed up with what we're talking about here every day. They take the initiative and take justice into their own hands, the vigilante citizen.
The truth is this: everyone is being used.
The vigilante citizen delivers justice some say the authorities have neglected.
Banned in several countries. Many governments have openly criticized it. They say it incites violence. There are scenes. A woman, for example, is beaten up, and this vigilante, who some compare to Clint Eastwood's Dirty Harry, takes revenge on the one who did it. Pilar, have you talked about that movie? Have you seen it yet?
Yes, I have, and I've analyzed it in depth, precisely due to the phenomenon. Well, of course, it's a warning. It's a warning. It touches on a taboo subject that shouldn't be discussed. So that's why a movie that's not very good, I mean, that doesn't have much to it, would have gone unnoticed. But of course, by canceling it, let's say, I mean, in Germany, they didn't give it the license to be shown in theaters and so on. So Elon posts it on X, and suddenly it becomes a phenomenon, precisely because of the censorship it faced. And it has a 94 approval rating among viewers compared to 14 among critics. And not because it's a good movie, but precisely because of that, because it touches on a taboo subject and is based on a real event, a brutal gang rape of a 15-year-old girl in Germany. And it goes after those people and the judges who acquit them.
Yeah. It's brutal. Are you going to watch it? Rancaño, cinema is your world.
Hey, I've already heard about it. I have it on my watch list. It's one of the ones I still need to watch. I've received them. The analysis that Pilar did seems very accurate to me because colleagues of mine whom I fully trust have done a very similar analysis. Possibly the movie from a cinematographic point of view isn't a great film, but it doesn't matter. Sometimes movies don't have to be technically great films. The movie does something that is extremely important in cultural terms. It's that it touches on topics others don't want to address completely, that others keep silent about, like we were talking about the other day, Albert. But what's this about lowering the cameras? But what's this about turning off the microphones so certain people or certain institutions don't get a voice to put the spotlight on certain events? It's incredible. Of course, it's been very well received because people are, allow me to say it this way, fed up with being told what they have to watch, what they have to feel, and with political correctness.
Yes. Well, the proof is this show we're doing. I always say it. Here we have panelists, collaborators, people who are invited not just for the panel, but also for interviews. 99% of them don't appear in any mainstream media outlet. Have you ever been called by Channel 1, Antenna 3, or Tele 5, Pilar, to go on their shows? No. And besides, if they did, I suppose it would just be to ridicule me. Well, no. How stingy they are.
Well, not even that. Look, you know, one time they called me from Canal No, and I don't think they'll ever call me again. Like I said, they called me from Canal No. And the host was really nice when he saw me and said, "Damn, Jose Luis, you're good at this. Come back."
Come back here. And I said,
Yeah.
Yeah. This is what you're good for.
But it's just that this whole politically correct thing is so complicated. It's just that all the institutions they all play the same game. I mean, the establishment in general, the elite in general, they all play the same game. All the elites play this game of silencing. They talked about the Inquisition. Well, it's a joke. The Spanish Inquisition is a joke compared to what's happening now, Albert. It's really, really a joke.
Well, I don't know if you're following the World Cup, but while we're all a bit mesmerized by the World Cup, whether your team wins or loses, the FBI is investigating the Argentine Football Association, and nobody is talking about this. I'm saying this because I think it's good for people to know. But of course, what could happen, I don't know. In a World Cup where FIFA takes away a red card from you because your name is Donald Trump, or where they steal a match from you like they did to Egypt just to make Messi happy, and these things happen. The president of FIFA, they happen. FIFA was already corrupt with Platini and Blatter, even up to the selection of Qatar as the World Cup host in exchange for billions. And now get ready, because FIFA, which is a hotbed of corruption, is worshipping Morocco, and Morocco is worshipping FIFA. And is the final of the new 2030 World Cup going to be in Casablanca? That's a fact. The worst part is that we'll even pay for their stadium, the biggest stadium in the world. The other day, I was telling you that we've already paid $1 billion in loans from the Spanish government for infrastructure and modernization in that area. For example, a new desalination plant in Casablanca was paid for by Spain. Why? To prevent a water shortage during the 2030 World Cup. And it's the same with everything, like the 30 commuter trains that we've also financed with loans through the company Acciona. What's the catch? Here, $1 billion in loans are given to Morocco and they never pay them back. And no one will ask in 10 years how much of the $1 billion they've paid back. That's the thing. The FBI, as I was saying, is investigating the top officials of the Argentine Football Federation for money laundering and bank fraud. It seems that they collected everything Adidas or Warner paid through a theater company. Look, a theater producer was collecting all the money from the brands for Argentine football, more than 300 million, and someone was keeping 30%, and it seems that FIFA knew about it. So that investigation is still ongoing. We'll see what happens. Do you follow the World Cup, Rancaño?
Yes, with some detachment. I'm a football lover, but I've been losing, how do you say it? I've been losing passion over the years. I like football, but I've been losing passion. And I've been losing passion since I realized that now more than ever it's bread and circuses, like in Roman times. Now I completely understand the bread and circuses of Rome. I think we have so many problems. I see so many people struggling. We have so many serious issues to deal with that it even seems frivolous to me. Alberto, to spend minutes of my time trying to make an intellectual analysis of soccer?
No, about the money they make, yes, we definitely need to discuss that.
This is something else. This is what I wanted. That's why I've been losing passion, right? You just mentioned the people who died in the fire in Almeria, right? I believe that public resources should be managed intelligently and according to priorities, and that we live in a kind of continuous embezzlement of public funds under the pretense of proper management. Because this matters. No, it's not embezzlement. They're just not managing funds properly. No, the money must be used for essentials.
Carlos Cuerpo seems to be a good professional outside of politics. He enters politics and becomes a hired hand on Sanchez's payroll, capable of signing off on the greatest absurdities. So does a corruptor corrupt everything, or do people allow themselves to be corrupted, Pilar? Because in the end, the ones who supposedly make it there are, on the one hand, those who have no chance to advance in the private sector. And secondly, when someone with a bit of sense arrives, the leader just shuts them down, right? He doesn't let you grow or come up with anything good.
Look, to get to those positions, it's the worst among us who get there. And if they weren't the worst before, they become worse afterwards. I mean, it's the worst in the class who govern us. And as for FIFA, for example, it's a monopoly. It's a global monopoly without competition. It's a cartel of 211 state monopolies granted by law. Therefore, it's the states that corrupt everything else. For example, Spanish law prohibits the existence of a second football federation. So there's no competition, but it's the state that prohibits that. Because without this government backing, any organizer could set up, well, I don't know, alternative federations. But the law, the state, doesn't allow them. So the troubling thing about this is that sports, I mean, wow, used to be a school of Western values. It was about merit, it was about effort, it was a clean, honest competition with a rival, otherwise it wasn't worth it. I mean, if you took drugs and all that, it was a Pyrrhic victory, right? But now what we're seeing now is that millions of children are seeing that if you side with power, then everything else doesn't really matter. So, of course, this is sinking, corroding Western civilization, which was based on all those values. Instead of
a child saying, I want to be a lawyer, they'll say, I want to be a politician. Or instead of getting me into a university, get me into a party that got better results, didn't win more, and I have more power. That's how it is.
Yes, but look, you said something earlier, Albert, that I don't agree with. I'm much more critical than you. I think that Carlos Cuerpo, those kinds of figures who join these kinds of governments are lethal. Even more lethal than the worst ministers of the current government. No. Do you know why? Because I'm convinced that some ministers in the current government are so useless that they don't even know they're doing a bad job, but Carlos Cuerpo does. Carlos Cuerpo is just whitewashing. He's trying to make this government look like sound governance and honest politics. Be careful with those figures. Be careful, Albert, with those. I agree. Those figures, by the way, will have a lot of explaining to do. Well, if audits were ever carried out, we'd see where the public money went. But it doesn't matter. With everything that's going on, Pilar, Albert, with everything that's going on, how many planes did they take? Did they go to the Christ, to the girls' party?
3 planes.
Planes.
An empty Falcon in case another one broke down. A Falcon for 2 ministers since Alvarez and Margarita Robles went. And the 80-seat Airbus for Sanchez and Mrs. Sanchez.
The family didn't return with British Airways or Iberia, right? Did they return with these airlines?
Man, you paid for it.
What's more? What's more?
Now everyone is going to La Marreta and you'll pay for the food, dinner, breakfast, the trip, and the stay.
Albert, what Pilar said, what message do these situations and this kind of behavior send to younger generations? You know who was telling me that, Pilar and Albert? Recently, Guardia Civil officers, when I was at the International Congress on Terrorism in Algeciras, I was in Cadiz, they told me that the most harmful thing about the world of drugs is the message you send to young people. Hey, why would you even bother to make an effort? Why would you study? Why would you have a family? Why would you commit yourself to values? But yeah, being a criminal, you'll live just fine. This is the harm that gets passed on. It's so serious among young people that Albert shows like yours, damn, they're starting to be like the early church. They're essential, Albert.
The oracle. Pilar, tell me.
No, about the oracle. Well, actually, and earlier Jose Luis mentioned Miguel Ancho Bastos, who is my doctoral thesis advisor precisely. I mean, and he talks a lot about values. He says that if you dig into any of the topics we've discussed, in the end, it all comes down to values. And what are Western values? They're the ones we've talked about today and the ones you talk about every day, Albert. They're the ones that are being undermined. Those Western values that sport already bequeathed to us back in ancient Greece. All of this is being deliberately destroyed.
Look, here we do crazy things. And besides, I think we're here to do them because I've been biting my tongue for 40 years in the media just to end up still biting it at this point, right? Workers in Venezuela called us, some from La Guaira. I'm sure you remember this friend who had nothing to eat, neither he nor his wife nor his daughter, and they were among the rubble of the earthquake. They were asking a Spanish businessman based in Vigo to pay them an old debt. That Spanish businessman didn't get paid by PDVSA what he needed to pay the employees, but we asked him to make an effort. He has done it. He has listened to us. And friends from La Guaira, sailors who haven't been paid in a long time, you're going to get paid. Listen to Jesus Rabadi, the businessman.
Hello, good morning, Albert. We are working on the solution for Venezuela because of the earthquake. We have decided, and without receiving funds from the ship owner, we have decided to advance money from our own funds to the crew, the entire crew in Nueva Guaira. I hope they arrive safely and that on our part we can contribute a little bit to the cause.
I really appreciate Jesus Rabadi for the gesture he has made. What were we asking of him? I understand that if a businessman doesn't get paid, he can't pay either. But he also understands that La Guaira, the earthquake, living on the street, can't wait. Therefore, the people, his workers from that area of Venezuela, are all receiving their full payment of the debt. Then the businessman will collect it later. That's the kind of company we like, Pilar. These are the business owners who don't just look at the bottom line, right?
Well, look, every era has its defining figure that represents it. In ancient times, it was the warrior. In the Middle Ages, the monk. Now, the business person. The three of us are. So the business person carries uncertainty on their shoulders. That is, you hire someone whom you're going to pay without even knowing if you're going to sell it. You don't know, but you have to. And you force people, you force yourself. You make yourself pay those people before there's even a possibility. That is, you take the uncertainty and you reduce the uncertainty for society. On the other hand, it's extremely important for these politicians we've seen, the ones we've talked about today, it's extremely important for them to crush all of us business owners. David Lafoz, for example, who also wanted to, work his own land. It's essential for these kinds of politicians who govern us today to wipe out the defining figure of our era.
Of course. And I would like to make a point in relation to what Pilar is saying. Escotado used to say, and he was absolutely right, that any small business owner or small merchant from any country in the world, from any era, has done more for the progress of humanity than any politician or Marxist revolutionary, those who appear in history books, and he is absolutely right. If you analyze things simply, naturally, you realize that entrepreneurs and merchants have been a driving force for humanity's progress since the beginning of history. They have generated wealth through their commercial activities. And this is what needs to be conveyed. What does the politician do? As Pilar said, the politician has to fight it because it's an enemy. The entrepreneur is the enemy. He represents freedom. He represents free individuals exchanging goods and services peacefully without the intervention of any totalitarian enemy of freedom telling them what they have to do beyond their own decisions. The agreements that free people make among themselves. I completely agree that the entrepreneur is possibly the figure that represents this in modern times.
About civil society, Miguel.
If the problem with civil society is that it doesn't have representation, then the most logical thing would be to create a party to represent civil society, which would surely do a lot of damage to the other parties. Then we would really have the strength to stand up to these scoundrels.
About solidarity, Eduardo.
Solidarity? Of course, but first with my neighbor I have to help, and I have to support, and I have to be in solidarity with the one next to me, and then we'll see about the others, obviously.
Question from Neves and Magdalena. Who pays for the trips for the graduation of Ainhoa, daughter of Sanchez and Begoña Gomez?
The whole Begoña affair is a joke. It's another battle that Sanchez has won. That is, any free citizen of this country has their passport confiscated and automatically loses the freedom to leave the national territory.
The tyrant has gone over to England for his daughter's thing. I don't care about the gun thing. So which plane did he take? Because that's not a state or government trip. Which plane did he take? He took an Airbus that fits 38 people, Roberto says. 80.
80. Magdalena. Juan Antonio goes further. He says that what's important is not what he took, but what he brought back. Listen.
Albert, it's not what he brings from Turkey with the Airbus. It's not 80 people, but what he took to Turkey, because this guy only has 4 days left.
It's very mysterious for someone to go alone to Turkey on an 80-seat plane. You have 2 ministers plus the press chiefs and so on, and you tell them no. Everyone on a Falcon while I go alone with my security detail on a plane with 80 seats. What was in the cargo hold, right? He's preparing the ground. Turkey is not just any place. We already said it here. It's the country that imprisons the most journalists in Turkey. From Europe, for example, where Sanchez has closed a deal with Erdogan for 3.2 billion euros from the Spanish government to buy planes. You expect me to believe that he didn't take a commission for that he did it as a tribute to the homeland? I don't know. Will we ever know, Rancaño? Will we ever show up here one day and say a bank account has been found and we'll say it? Well, that's it.
But how the situation has been getting worse. Now that you mentioned Turkey, Albert, damn NATO. The free nations organized to defend themselves from the communist invader, and they're going to hold a meeting in a country led by a tyrant who throws anyone who dares to criticize him in jail left and right. Honestly, everything I've seen in Turkey makes me sick. Macron, I can't stand him posing for a jogging photo with 300 bodyguards on the streets of Ankara. Honestly, I would sacrifice the entire European elite. I'm telling you directly, Albert, they're the worst. They're toxic.
Well,
where is the spirit of the free European nations? Yes, where is it? Where has it gone?
And I've saved a gem for near the end. A man named Jaime Vindel, who is a professor, environmentalist, and expert. They have been giving some courses that we talked about here, sponsored by the Spanish government, about the relationship, hold on tight, Pilar, between oil and masculinity. And the conclusion is what they call petromasculinity. The conclusion is that when the 600 came along under Franco, it turned all of our fathers and grandfathers into complete male chauvinists. I want you to listen to him, please. Listen to this genius.
It's also during that time, during Franco's regime, when the ideas of petromasculinity were established in Spain, right? But of course, there's also a substantial difference here compared to the context in the United States that we saw earlier in Kara's lecture. And the thing is, while in the context of the United States, right, and in general in Anglo-Saxon narratives, right, in the development of fossil modernity, the use of fuels has been linked to liberal democracy, right? And let's say to an ideal of freedom that would be represented by that patriarchy, right? That resorts to the automobile as a symbol, right, of identity and of freedom. In the Spanish case, but it also happens in other contexts in Southern Europe and the global South, the automobile appears as a symbol of development, of developmentalism during Francoism, that is, during an authoritarian period. Let's say there's a link between petromasculinity and autonomy. Authoritarianism that is different from the narratives that can be woven from a context like that of the United States, and which I think can also...
Pilar, this man reminded me that the whole 600 thing was petromasculinity, which honestly reminds me more of Gustavo Petro than of petroleum.
Yes. Right? In academia, if you don't say these things, you don't get ahead. No.
Of course.
You don't get ahead. They won't publish your article.
Patriarchy 2 or 3 times. Resilience, right? There are key words.
Of course, they need to destroy Western culture. They need to destroy men. We need men. We need men in the West. And for women, I mean, it's a total destruction. With this, they destroy the family. With this, they destroy the roots we have, and they go full speed ahead. Now, it's just like what José Luis de Gran Gramsci used to say before. They've done it phenomenally. Let's see if we learn. Let's see if we learn to do the same, but with a different message. And of course, with all this, what do they achieve? When the one who decides doesn't face the consequences, everything we've talked about regarding Sanchez, his planes, taking his family, and on top of that, when journalists or whoever ask, they say, no, but this is private. Yes, private, but you pay for it.
Of course.
So when they don't pay the consequences of their decisions, when they spend the money they confiscate from us for their own benefit, well, of course, they have privileges that are paid for by siphoning off our income. As we were saying, 2 out of every 3 days we work for these people who spend it recklessly.
It's not even mentioned. I mean, in the mainstream media, it hasn't even been talked about. Who paid for the trip? How do they pay for the private universities for their daughters? Why do we have to pay for the parents' trip and the parents' vacations? for Sanchez's parents, it's not even debated. They just take it for granted, which is maybe the worst part, right?
Look, Albert, when I was listening to this guy who I suppose didn't have an audience, because if he does, it's amazing. But do you know what came to my mind, Pilar, Albert? A song came to my mind, a song by Loquillo that goes something like, why should we argue if we can fight? Because with people like this, I feel like fighting. You know what I'm saying? No, it just came to me. It just came to my mind. The song by Loquillo.
Let's see, you start like this and end up like this.
But no, I'm saying that it came to me, it came to mind, a song that ties in with what Pilar was saying, right? There are a lot of journalists who say, no, you can't keep tabs on that. It's the president's private life. It's his children's private life. That's it. He's flying on a plane we all pay for. That's it. I mean, it's a private life paid for with Spanish people's money. But be careful, interestingly, be careful about setting limits and how right Pilar is about what she's saying. Your thesis advisor, Anson Bastos, used to say that the state is a group of criminals. He used the word bandits, organized to steal our money through taxes. In essence, originally, that's what all states are. Later on, they give themselves legitimacy, but people shouldn't forget that at the beginning of history, it was a group of bandits who came to a territory and imposed their rules and imposed their own laws. Later, they give themselves another kind of legitimacy. That's what I was telling Albert the other day. I said, who is the state? I don't know him, where he is, or who they are. I can't have coffee with the state.
Let's go to the newsroom, and then there's a concern I need to share with Pilar. Let's see. First, Susana Gask, latest messages tell us.
We're still here. Greetings to everyone from the newsroom of Castellón Confidencial. It's the beginning of the week, and the insiders, many of them on vacation, keep sending us messages.
That's Ciel's point. When people give in out of fear, they stop being free.
Ascension argues that legal immunity, lifelong pensions, and diplomatic passports should be abolished, and that officials should have the same rights as the rest of the Spanish people.
Antonio says that chat control is absolutely shameful and asks us a question. Where is data protection right now?
Deco says King Juan Carlos made a great move and congratulates Albert Castellón for his clarity and courage. Pedro also says that if anyone has contacts in Spain, it's King Juan Carlos. Well done. We expect a lot from him since his son does absolutely nothing. Angel says that the chat control is like the law of silence, like the mafia's code, taken to the most extreme level. Goodbye to the freedoms of thought, conscience, expression, press, assembly, and association.
We must leave the European Union no matter what, because we're heading toward a dictatorship.
Charo says that solar panels and wind turbines usually heat up the earth and make temperatures rise. That's also very dangerous. Neuro Ray says that the dictatorship of the European Parliament is incredible when seen from another country. It's absolutely totalitarian control. Best regards and congratulations on the show. Interishi says that diplomatic passports are used to commit crimes internationally without questions, without checks, and without any kind of control. That's how things are going. STR says that unfortunately the tragedy in Los Gallardos happened because of this, because of that, because of the fallen power line, and especially because of the lack of safety we have in the forests. Rosie says that we have the power and we're afraid to use it. As long as we keep going like this, things will only get worse.
We should stop paying taxes. We need to put the pressure on them. There are 48 million of us and very few of them.
And here, it's really important that you follow us on all social media, on all our channels, and of course, on the digital newspaper castellonconfidential.com to stay well informed. Thank you, Albert.
Thank you. If we need to worry about Cepeda, you know that Cepeda lost the elections in Colombia, that De La Espriella won, but Cepeda doesn't accept the winner. Listen.
And without De La Espriella giving up his status as a U.S. citizen, probably also as a member of a U.S. security agency, shouldn't he take office as President of the Republic? And if he does, his inauguration will undoubtedly be tainted, without a doubt, as illegal and illegitimate.
Are you saying he's a CIA spy, Pilar?
She's saying all kinds of things. The worst one isn't Cepeda anymore. The worst one is Petro, the outgoing one, who shouldn't even be expressing an opinion. But on the 20th, we have a national protest here to paralyze the country and so on. No, they're not going to succeed. They're not going to succeed because De La Espriella, for example, is doing something that we should be doing in Spain. He's doing a due diligence, a due diligence paid by him, that is with the donations people have given him, paid out of his own pocket to see what has been found. And now he has already said, look,
with all this that we're doing, it's a general audit, something that the PP has never done with the PSOE, nor the PSOE with the PP, right?
Because it suited them. It suited both sides. No. Here, an audit is being done like when someone buys a company. I want to audit everything. And of course, in that audit, it's very likely that Petro will be extradited to the United States. And that's also why he talks so much about the United States.
And also, when I saw him, I heard him make a very important statement of principles, a very important one. It's a full-on declaration of war against drug trafficking. Yes. In his first statements, he made it perfectly clear. He told them, all your privileges are going to end, right? That's why they'll say he's an American spy. Well, yes, I suppose.
Look, I'll tell you more this week, but I'll give you a hint. There is a contributor to this program who not only knows De La Espriella, but is also his partner in law firms in Bogota. Therefore, I will invite him this week to tell us about all these things we're talking about, the threats, the general audit, the drug trafficking, the CIA, he'll probably laugh, and a few other things. And you will find out who that contributor to this program is, who by coincidence happens to be a partner and personal friend of De La Espriella. I hope to interview De La Espriella soon, of course. I hope I can make it happen. Hugs to both of you. Pilar Almagro, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you, Confidenciales.
And dear Rancaño, may they keep watching the documentary. Just entering the name, right? That's enough. You'll find it. It takes us there on YouTube. YouTube takes us there.
Nos dirige para allá. Type David Lafoz, and if not, they can go to the Dahlia Things channel. But now, with the number of views, I think just the name will lead them there pretty easily. And thank you, Albert, for supporting this kind of project. And thanks to the Confidenciales who are always with me in these adventures. See you later.
Of course, we're a team.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Take care. Sending you a hug. Farewell.
Let's make this the most watched documentary on YouTube. I'm counting on you. There's more. In a minute, I have a farewell. See you later.
Which has had a debt of more than 2.5 million euros cancelled. She tells us about it. You're listening to Castillon Confidential.
When my mother died, I inherited her debts and I was left alone. Then COVID came. I went months without receiving a single euro. I even needed psychological help.
If you are in a situation of insolvency, contact us and we will tell you if you meet the requirements of the second chance law. Sin Deuda Group, your second chance.
Friends, today we have wonderful news. Someone, thanks to Sin Deuda Group, has had their debt cancelled. Yes. But in 6 years at Sin Deuda Group, they had never cancelled a debt like this. Are you sitting down? 2,600,000 euros cancelled under the second chance law, with all the advantages that law offers and with the help of Sin Deuda Group. This really is a miracle thanks to a job well done. Raquel, how are you?
Well, look, I'm crying again right now, but I'm doing very well.
It's no wonder that every time they remind you, you get emotional. That means you've had a really tough time, right?
I've had a really hard time. It's been unbearable. There are things as small as not being able to switch, not even change phone companies, being tied to abusive car insurance contracts that they either don't give you or they do. Things so every day that one thing piles up on another and it ends up even costing you your health.
You worked as an administrative assistant in a family-owned company in the food sector. It started going through difficulties. Money is secured by having your sisters and father act as guarantors. And in the end, Well, the whole thing collapses, and of course, the banks enforce the guarantees. No one forgives you anything there, right?
Nothing. No one forgave absolutely anything.
Hey, how was it to call Sindoda Group to start submitting documents? Did you think you were going to achieve this?
It was. I didn't believe it because it was so long with the noose around my neck and the knife because you don't see a way out. I didn't think I was going to make it. In fact, it's a process that lasted almost 3 years, and it's very hard work on a personal level and also with speeding up paperwork and everything else. So when they called me on Thursday to tell me, the first thing I did was let out a gasp of relief. Because it feels like you can't see the light, but you do get there.
Man, come on. The thing with you is the owner of the company wrote to me so happily, Gil and his people, with such joy, as if the debt was theirs. Well, it even led to your divorce. I don't want to dig deeper, but it's a high price to pay. All of that wears out the whole family, doesn't it?
Yes, it's very hard. There's a saying that goes, when money doesn't come in through the door, love goes out the window, and that's exactly how it is. It was very hard. It has cost me a lot on a personal level. My family too, especially since I have a son, and I wondered what I was going to leave him. Nothing?
Of course.
And plenty of issues since he's a teenage boy. And I mean, God living day to day, and you can't deviate from what you have planned. But I got in touch with Canarias Sindoras as I know them, and it has been an incredible support in my daily life. In fact, they got personally involved. The lawyer who was handling it called me directly, and my advisor also called me in the afternoon. Of course, both of them were crying once they gave me the news.
It's just incredible. 2 million, a bit more, but I'll leave the small change aside. 2,600,000 euros of debt cancelled completely legally. Here, nobody can come after you for anything. It's the second chance law. Well, I don't need to ask. You recommend it, right? Anyone who has a problem who feels trapped like you did, absolutely. Yeah, right?
Absolutely, they should do it because it's a job that wears you out, especially at the beginning. Maybe not so much at the very start. Having to look for all the information, being very detail-oriented with everything they ask you for, being in direct contact with the company. But anyway, they make sure you don't get lost along the way, and they offer you all the help possible. They are very human and approachable, and you should definitely do it without a doubt because it's a breath of fresh air.
Now, starting over, I know you've always been very hardworking. You've never stopped working. You're still working. Now, we don't leave anything to others anymore, right? We start from scratch with our heads held high. I'm so happy, Raquel, she ended up in a good family too. That's great. That's great. Yes.
Yes, I'm happy too. You're happy and I'm happy. I can't even say how much. And because you see a brighter future despite everything, no matter how things are and all that. But you say, I have some room to maneuver. I mean, I can rely on other things, or I no longer have the guillotine hanging over me, wondering when another seizure or another lawsuit will come. I understand the phone calls, the harassing calls and all that. It's been tough, but now it's different. When Lydia called me, my advisor, Lydia, the very next day, one of the debt collection companies called me and I did this. I said, excuse me, I'll send you the court order. EPI sent it to you and it's like, I can breathe. You know, it's like, God, it's wonderful.
Congratulations, Raquel. It's a pleasure to meet you. Congratulations, and may many friends make that call that will give them the peace of mind you have today. Sending you a kiss. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Oh, folks, write it down, please. 91910871009. Sindeuda Group. They are confidential. Friends, there are wonderful messages you send me, some very moving, like this one from Begonia.
Albert, I want to congratulate you on the show, you and your whole team, for all the information you give us and for the courage you have. And secondly, I would like you to do an investigation, but a thorough investigation, because I would like to know if there is a king in Spain. Thank you very much.
It's not necessary, Begonia, to make it so thorough. Yes, there's a king, but it's useless. That's the sad part. He's there so that the institutions work, so that the state stays united, but it's useless. But anyway, the day they say goodbye to him, he'll probably demand that we Spaniards defend him. He's capable of, well, we'll see. Thank you. Begonia, the messages are very smart, like this one from Jose Maria. He says, the wise man defends his country, the fool defends his party, and the corrupt man defends the thief he backs. Let's see if the wise man gets it. Any of you, the fool like Pachi Lopez who defends his party, or the whole list of corrupt people who defend the thief they back, period. Well, Pilar Baselga goes further. Pilar really thinks things through.
Felipe Gonzalez was given bonsais as gifts, and Pedro Sanchez was given loaded revolvers. Things are getting interesting.
She's incredible. She's incredible. She's incredible. Pilar is incredible. Well, Anna, don't be afraid. This show will go on.
I'm constantly following the issue, this thing about them wanting to either shut you down or bother you on the shows you have both on Instagram and on YouTube, like quite a few other journalists. Or let's say people who are supposed to be a bit more troublesome for those who don't want certain kinds of news to be spread. I don't know. No, there are many people who wouldn't accept you shutting down your show. Well, I just wanted to tell you that, and well, stay strong and keep going as always. And I think this can't go much further. This decree, this law, or whatever they're going to call it or are calling it, because it just doesn't make sense.
Let's stop it. We're already stopping a lot of attacks. They're surrounded. Don't you realize how we started the show just now? Honestly, the strength of civil society, judges, the civil guards, central operational unit, and you all is stopping the coup. It hasn't stopped completely, no. It could go on for months, even years, yes. But they're surrounded. The ones who should be afraid, Anna, are them. They, for the first time, should start trembling a little and not make others tremble. Well, a really good one from Conchita. You can see Sanchez at the Moncloa Palace taking out a chair. Take a look.
I'm not leaving! I'm not leaving! I'm not leaving!
And to those who wonder why this administration, this government wants to continue despite all the difficulties and obstacles along the way, I tell them that this is the answer. This is what we keep going for, to improve people's lives. We continue to expand and consolidate social rights. We continue to build a fairer and better Spain.
Get out, you scoundrel!
And you can see him moving the chair.
I'm not leaving!
I'm not leaving. It's good. And here's another one Marta sent me from Froy Lannister, Francisco Franco speaking.
Dear Pedrito, I'm glad to see that you still remember me, even 50 and 51 years later. Although I admit I didn't expect this tribute in the form of a clothing line, Cookie Democracy. To protect democracy and to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Franco's death. Although it seems like math took the day off for you, and now it's either 50 or 51. All of this, of course, with public money. One of them, money, you understand, valued at 386,000 euros out of the 14.6 million that you have already spent to promote the values of democracy. And remember me, because it's clear that modern democracies are not sustained by strong institutions or civic education, they are sustained by sweatshirts. And speaking of details, the Made in China label was part of the message. By the way, you dropped the E, although on second thought, maybe it was to save ink. And wait, the best part is yet to come. You're a Democrat and you don't even know it. You're a tremendous Democrat.
But hey, if the sweatshirts made by the government are from China, what commission did Zapatero get? Because come on, he doesn't do anything for free, not even look at the sun or say good morning. Well, Maria del Carmen, thank you for your donation. You're very kind. Maria del Carmen Castillo, Pedro Garcia for the truth. Thank you, Pedro. Diego Torres says, don't give up. Thank you, Diego, for your donation. And thank you very much, Antonio Pedro Gonzalez, for your donation. Thank you all for being there, for helping us. Just giving a heads up today. We're preparing a special for tomorrow. We don't want to talk anymore about whether there was electoral fraud or not. No. We'll tell you how Lere did it, how Lere changed the result, the election result, thanks to mail-in voting, allegedly. Tomorrow, stay tuned to the channel. There's a surprise. Thank you, friends. See you tomorrow.
You know it and I know it. We are confidential. You are confidential. I am confidential. All confidential. All confidential. But shh, only for open minds and for awakened people. From the trench, the bullets whistle, and there's no way to get out there. Here, freedom has wings of wax. Albert Castellon, Susanna Gack, your girl Castellon and the rest, oh. Thank you very much. That the Hindu is a cat. Go on, give the Hindu the cake until tomorrow at 8.
Castillon Confidential by Albert Castillon.